Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Combat Shillelagh Impact and Edged Weapons Concepts webinar. This is Brent Earlywine. I'm founder and lead instructor of the Combat Shillelagh system. We've got folks from all over, so we have a pretty good group. We had a huge number of registrants. There's probably going to be a couple stragglers here in the next minute or so, but we wanted to stay on time and maximize the time that you have and go through our discussion. It's going to be a good one tonight. So we'll do introductions here in a second, but just want to welcome everybody to the webinar. A couple of housekeeping items. All your lines are on mute. So if you have a question or a comment, please just drop it in the chat. We will pay attention to that as we go, and then we'll certainly answer questions as they come up. If we do not get to your question, we are saving the chat. So worst case, we will respond in email, and we'll certainly share the chat history in email with all the attendees after the fact as well. You also will get a email reminder afterwards, so you have access to the replay. If you were here, great, you can listen to it again. There's some good stuff. And then for folks that were registered and weren't able to attend, they'll be able to access the recording as well. So just a couple of quick notes. Always love to see where everybody is from. We've got a pretty broad group tonight and still coming. So I see Oregon, I see Australia. Dean, you get the prize tonight. Alabama, Rochester, New York, Michigan, and a couple folks here in Pennsylvania, Denver, and New Kensington. Craig, you say hello from up north. I'm assuming that's Canada. So glad you are here. So appreciate everybody joining. So let's go ahead and get started. So just as a reminder, again, the conversation tonight is around impact and edge weapons concepts. And what we mean by that is the ways that we train with a impact weapon, the shillelagh, the cudgel, how some of those training concepts can translate to edged weapons, bladed weapons. We actually do edged weapons in the higher levels of our system, and what will translate in training concepts and what won't translate in those training concepts. So really looking forward to this. This is always a fun discussion. We have some great content for everybody tonight. All right, so from a quick agenda overview, we'll go through introductions on the team, myself, Brian, and Garrett that you see here on video. We have a teaser discussion that we want to have with you on something that's a up and coming event that we're very, very excited about. Then we'll go through some discussion around principle-based instruction, why that's important, what it means to you. We'll talk about impact weapons concepts. We'll talk about edge weapons and concepts. We'll talk about, and a little bit of a tease here as well, the Dead Man's 10. Finding out that humans are actually really difficult to do permanent damage to and what that means. And then, of course, training concepts that translate back and forth between blunt force, impact weapons, and edge weapons. And really, that's kind of the heart of the discussion. And then we'll go through what's coming up here in the next couple of days, couple of months, and into next year for coming events. All right. So why don't we start with this? I already introduced myself, but I'll say it again real quick. Brent Earlywine, founder, lead instructor for the Combat Shillelagh system. Really appreciate everybody that is a potential student, current student, active student of ours, wherever you might be in the world. We are celebrating students in 36 states in the United States and 21 countries around the world and counting since we launched the system, which is just an amazing, amazing amount of traction and engagement. And I can't thank everybody enough. It's really been very humbling and just a total blast to have that many folks in the system to train with, to talk to, and to share the information with. So with that, let me hand this over to Brian. You want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, thanks, Brent. My name's Brian Fine. I think I am Brent's longest time student. This is year 20 for me. And this martial arts journey has taken me all around the world. I am a federal firearms licensee. I'm a firearm manufacturer and dealer. That's brought us into some very, very close contact with modern force law and modern violence, in addition to hitting people with sticks and sharp objects. So,
awesome. All right, and Garrett.
Hi, I'm Garrett Haynes, along with Nick Carrington. I'm one of the senior instructors. Started training in the 80s with other styles, and I've been training with these gentlemen since 14, 15 years ago, and I believe Nick is at 17 or 18. So
Somewhere
he is
there.
on the chat. Yeah. Otherwise, he would be here, but he is on the chat, and just so exciting to see all these folks here from around the world. It's going to be a good night.
Awesome. So Nick just said 18 years. I know he's on mobile this evening. Otherwise, he'd be live with us as well. So very appreciative of having folks in the extended training family for so long in training together at this point. Friends, colleagues, peers, students, instructors. It's all the above in the relationship. So very much appreciated. So I want to start with really kind of a teaser, if you will, on something that's coming in 2024. But I want to start with a question. So here's the concept. Well, let me actually just show you the quick teaser, and then I'll ask my question. And I have some videos, so you guys will have to let me know if you have any issues on hearing or seeing. I'm assuming it'll be okay. Hi, I'm Brent Earlywine. I'm the founder and the lead instructor for the Combat Shillelagh system, and I have an amazing announcement to make. In 2024, in March, we are going to be conducting a masterclass on the Shillelagh Irish stick fighting, and we're going to be doing it in Ireland. But this will be a full immersion experience on an Irish estate outside the town of Shillelagh, where we will study in depth and train day and night in Shillelagh Irish stick fighting, and it's going to be an absolute blast. So submit your very loud. It's very loud on my side. I'm not sure how loud it was on everybody else's side. So, look, the first thing I'd start with is, we've had conversations with students on, hey, how do we get a group together? How do we actually do some training in Ireland? How do we go to the source? And we've put together an amazing package, details. And I really want you to think about, what's it take to make the commitment and come to that kind of event. And what is that level of training really going to be worth for you and with you, right? So this is on a dedicated Irish estate that we've rented out for just us in the town of Shillelagh in Ireland. We will have multiple days, day and night of training. We're going to have some special sessions, so one-on-one time with myself, my senior instructors. We're going to go through some skills audits to help baseline your skills before you get there, handhold you as you go through the multiple days of training, and then give you information and an audit on the end of the event on what you need to work on specifically for you and customize just for you. So we have some more details coming, but I really wanted to start tonight with that teaser announcement to say this is coming in 2024, and I am super excited about it. All right. So let's talk about what we're going to get into tonight, concepts between impact and edged weapons. And clearly what we train in is focused very much on the shillelagh and the cudgel. The shillelagh being an impact weapon, or most traditionally thought of as an impact weapon. And we will go through really some discussions on what that means, what the concepts are that we pay attention to in the system, what the results are, what we expect to get out of it. But then we're also going to spend some time really on how that translates into other kinds of training and applications, i.e., are there ways to use impact weapons and treat them like edged weapons and vice versa? So I wanted to start with really, and Brian, you and I can kind of split this if you don't mind, but I want to start with a core philosophy. And we talked about this the last time we were together, but one of the things that makes us different is we are very focused on what we label as principle-based instruction. So the intent is not that, we're trying to get you to memorize hundreds and thousands of techniques, do this, do that, do this, do that. But really, we want you to understand something at a principle based level or a very deep concept level, because once you understand the principles, then you can apply that or create or use that technique in the moment. It becomes born in the moment because you understand the why or the principle underneath of what you're trying to accomplish and what your goal and strategy really looks like. So, Brian, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so we call this system Combat Shillelagh, not duel for status Shillelagh. And when we use the term combat, we mean real modern violence. And while it is our sincere hope that you never have to defend your life or the life of someone else with a stick in a dark alley or in a bar somewhere, that is the purpose of the system that we practice. And violence is generally involuntary in the first world. We don't get to choose what cards we're dealt. So you're not going to have time to say, okay, well, I've trained to fight with a stick against somebody else with a stick. What if there's 5 of them? They have knives and guns, right? Or what if you left your stick at home and you have a broken beer bottle or your bare hands? We use principles that translate across any weapon, any force multiplier. It allows us to learn much more quickly and efficiently, and we're able to then access those skills under stress. And that's something that I would say makes us quite a bit different than the way most martial arts are practiced today.
Yeah, agreed. And, I'd tease out one of the really critical points inside of that, Brian, which is once you understand principles, you can almost pick anything up and apply that concept to whatever you happen to have in your hand. So if you understand principles on staff weapons, stick weapons, impact weapons, it doesn't matter what the physical object is in your hand, you can apply those concepts. So you don't have to relearn it again if it's a shillelagh versus a cudgel versus a broomstick versus a whatever, right? So you can apply those concepts. Now, obviously, there's going to be some unique varieties between physical objects, and shillelagh, for example, with the knobbed end, has some unique characteristics that come into play. But in general, those principles are going to translate really, really well once you understand them at that level. All right. So I wanted to start with a really good definition on blunt trauma. So, blunt trauma, it's an injury caused by an object striking or hitting the body. And I think when anybody ever has the idea of stick fighting or shillelagh stick fighting or Irish stick fighting in their head, this is really where their brain goes to and what they think of. And it's certainly very applicable and very appropriate. Essentially, you're hitting the other person to get them to stop doing what they're doing, in defense of yourself and others. There's some logical targets that we would want to pay attention to and hit, if you will. But essentially, what we're trying to do is we're trying to cause blunt force trauma with the shillelagh or the cudgel. So, if you're an active student of ours, you've seen this chart before. This is our anatomy striking targets, and essentially the point here is that we have primary targets if we're going to use it or treat it like a blunt force object, and typically this is going to be anywhere the bones are close to the surface of the skin. Again, from a principle or a concept perspective, that's much easier to remember than all these circled targets that might be on a human body on the front side or rear. But if you just remember anywhere the bones are close to the surface of the skin, that's a really viable target when you're trying to cause blunt force trauma in defense of yourself and others. So I have a couple of quick video clips that I want to go through. But before that, I just did want to call out. If anybody's ever heard of mechanical compliance or pain compliance, essentially it's concepts to understand how to get the other person to stop doing what they're doing, right? So if they're trying to harm you in some way, mechanical compliance, easiest way to understand that is you're trying to physically do something to their body so their body or body part doesn't work anymore. So mechanically, it's not able to continue its attack. Pain compliance is very, very unreliable, by the way, but pain compliance is basically what it says, trying to use the application or creation of pain to get them to comply or to stop doing what they're doing. Unfortunately, if somebody is 12 beers into the evening, they're on drugs or some sort of mind altering substance, or even just highly adrenalized, or have some sort of mental issues, pain compliance is very unreliable as a way to get somebody to comply.
It also, pain compliance is extremely common in other martial arts systems and is what we call a training artifact in most methods of training. Because when we're practicing, we don't tend to be under survival stress response. We're hanging out with our friends doing a fun thing, and you get hit, and oh shit, that hurts, and you drop it and run away. Or if you get tapped in the nuts, you'll probably hit the ground immediately and tear up. That's because we're in a lower stress environment when we're doing that. Encountering the same thing when you are under a survival stress response, or more commonly called an adrenaline dump, is likely to just make you angry. And then as people get older, men specifically, we lose a lot of feeling in our skin. So that kind of compliance doesn't work as well. I also probably wouldn't try pain compliance on a woman who's been through childbirth. It's not likely to work as well as you want.
Yeah, there's I mean, these are some rabbit holes of really deep subject matter that we've spent a lot of time with violence thought leaders to understand at a pretty high level. But when you get into pain compliance, women in particular, they have a long adrenal curve, and what I mean by that is men have a tendency high adrenal dump, so they spike and then it drops off really quickly, and the women have a tendency to have this long drawn out. So by the time we're mad, we're pissed off, and then we calm down again, woman is probably still getting ramped up. So from a pain compliance perspective, all you're going to do is probably piss her off. So I don't know that that's a good strategy for compliance on a female, unfortunately. All right, so let's go through a couple of I've chosen some quick short videos of ours from past classes and seminars just to show you concepts. I have three that show some of the blunt force or impact kinds of applications utilizing the shillelagh or cudgel. These should be pretty familiar concepts and be very straightforward, and certainly what you would expect to see for applications of the shillelagh. And I want to just do this. Ooh. It's think of it as kind of like a helicopter where I'm here. Okay, so that is actually with Nick, one of our senior instructors, but showing clearly a shot to the side of the temple. So let's go to the next one. I want to disarm him. I want to so he can't hit me with his stick because I've removed it, I've broken it, I've made it so he can't hold it anymore. So we're hitting the sticks, but you got to remember that my targeting is not the stick. My targeting is going to be his hands. So you think of that way out in front, and I get to this slow, and then that's his hand. He's not holding it anymore. Maybe I want to force him to pay attention, and then I switch it, and then I'm taking something. And start to mix and match, where maybe this is going to be here, but then later I'm going to be switch my target. First one is hand, and then the second one is outside of the knee, right? Or it's right side, then left side, where I get to here, bang, and then I switch. Okay, and then third one, and then we'll see if Brian or Garrett has any commentary on some of this stuff. I want other body parts. Yeah, so we were starting with the hands, go ahead, because they're closer, but we can get through. Woo! That was close. I almost missed the up. This is going on. Bang, bang. I'm going to hit stuff that I can reach. Okay, so those are the three. Brian, Garrett, anything you want to add to that?
I was going to say for folks, I was the one holding that stick, and there are two things I want you to know. A, I didn't know where Brent was going to attack, so I was like, no matter what he does, I'm holding this stick. And then B, he wasn't actually hitting me combat hard. He was not using his whole body weight, which is a different conversation. And I'm going to tell you, the shock that went through my system, if that was my hand, I'd have no wrist, arms, anything. I'd be thinking about that, and he'd be free to either run away or continue to attack me. We try to train safely, but you should know this is serious, and if you hit someone with it, it would have serious impacts.
Yep. Thanks, Garrett. You might want to check your audio. I'm getting it's kind of muddled on my side. Brian, anything you want to
add? Just the way we typically train this, we're looking for mechanical compliance. Again, that physical inability to continue. So I don't care how adrenalized they are. I don't care how tough they are. I don't care how altered of a state they're in. I want to make it physically impossible for them to continue doing whatever it is they're doing that caused me to be beating them mercilessly with a stick in the first place. And that's a different viewpoint than I think a lot of others approach it for. So we're specifically looking for. You hear the term disarm. We mean it mechanically. If the hands
Correct.
can no longer grip a tool, the arms can no longer be lifted because the elbow and ulnar and radius are shattered, then there's a very, very good chance that I'm going to be safe. We look at that from a stick point of view. That's one thing. It requires a certain degree of mechanical compliance. But if I take it to the highest level we're likely to encounter in interpersonal violence, then I need them to be physically incapable of doing this. Because if they can pull a trigger, they can still kill me. So we would actually need to cause enough damage that they can't physically do that anymore.
There you go. All right. So before I go to the next slide, just be forewarned, trigger warning, a couple of graphic images, but they're there for a very important reason. So we're not BSing one another. We're talking about what real violence actually looks like. So we're going to shift to edged weapons or cutting or stabbing weapons. So I'll start with the idea that human beings are actually remarkably hard to kill or to stop completely. That is also coupled with the fact that trauma medicine in the last multiple decades has advanced by leaps and bounds. I would say since the 70s and 80s. Effectively, if you can get to assistance as a victim, your survival rates are actually really, really high, even against some horrific injuries. So I picked a couple here to show you the two really different types. The three to the right are stabbing wounds. The one with the samurai sword I stumbled across yesterday, which was amazing to me, having studied and taught Japanese martial arts for multiple years. To see that is a little crazy to say that modern day society there's still threats from Japanese swords. But on the far left, you see the more typical kind of wounds from slashing or cutting versus stabbing. So typically the stabbing wounds are a little more dangerous and more lethal, but we'll talk about that here in a second. But in the background, you can't really see it, but if you kind of fade out and take a look behind the text on the slide, it's another image of a gentleman in an ER, and he's got a rather large knife shoved into the side of his ribs down there on the bottom of the slide. So just showing you how difficult it is to stop somebody even with a edged weapon that's considered a lethal weapon. So I have a couple of video examples here as well, but before I go to those, there's really two main concepts when you're talking about edged weapons. So cutting or slashing, which is that far left image as an example, versus stabbing. So two different types, two different goals, two different techniques or strategies if you're trying to use that in defense of yourself and others. Typically, this is going to be towards soft tissue targets. So if you remember for the blunt force trauma and impact weapons, we were very focused on mechanical compliance and where bones are close to the surface of the skin. So you want to be able to reach the joints, the bones, because you're trying to break and really destroy the skeletal structure. Edge weapons are a little bit different. It's always soft tissue as a target. It can be mechanical compliance if you're ending up cutting tendons and ligaments, and it could also very much be pain compliance as well. But again, you've got the risks associated trying to rely on pain compliance, even from cutting or stabbing. And then we'll talk in a few seconds about the dead man's 10 and what reality actually looks like, even with some pretty significant wounds that somebody might experience, and how long they can still be a threat. So let me start with the first two videos. This is focused on utilizing the Shillelagh's ferrule end from a stabbing perspective.
I simply just change and start stabbing him in the hand until I get bored of it and I win the fight. Yes, it is that easy. Stab until dead. Nope. I don't have to wait for him at all. The way I'm using it, I'm using the full length of this weapon, and I'm just going to poke anything that gets even remotely near to me. All right? If he gets savvy to this, which is actually how we train spear, spear is you stab them, and if it works, you just go stab the next guy. If it doesn't work, because they get fancy and start blocking and parrying and backing away and doing stuff like that, what we do is we go stab, we change to a hit, and then we go back to stab.
Okay, we'll go to the second one.
The other guy gets a say, if I can reach him, he can reach me, so I need to use a body shape that if I'm doing these stabs, I'm really extended, so it's hard for him to hit me in return. See how my body shape's very different? And I'm also using full length of the weapon. And when I go to stab, I'm extending my body at the same time. So I get really, really good reach. And guess what? I don't stay here. I retract. Because guess what? He's going to want to try to hit me every time I stab out. That's cool. Back up so we have space. Yeah. Woo! Yeah? So proper body shape and proper distance.
Okay, so before I go into the videos showing cutting, just reiterate that at the higher level of our systems, we actually do blade work. We have blade work, so we do shillelagh, we do shillelagh and cudgel, we do double cudgel, we do shillelagh and short blade, we do cudgel and short blade, we do 2 short blades. So a mix and match of a little bit of all the above. So the next ones are going to show you some of those concepts in transition between the material from beginner to first degree black belt, and then as you move into assistant instructor, and master levels, where we start to introduce some of the bladed concepts as well. So let's go to the first one. So long and short, so this time we'll mix and we'll do the cudgel will now become a blade of some kind, like a dart or a dagger, whatever. I just happen to use this as a trainer. So we'll do a long strike and then we're doing a short cut. Long strike, short cut. So out, out. So out, out. Yep. So if I do a short, long, and take away his ability to hold the short, long, here and here. The first time I did it was long, short, or long, short. Okay, and then let me go to the next one.
Oh, right? I'll do the stick or cut, right? Or if we mix and match, cut, stab, stab. Yeah? So I can cut all different ways based on orientation. So get to here, retreat, going, going, or reverse cuts. Okay?
And then we'll go to the third one.
Get to these short cuts on. I'm going to cut it. Cut it. So I get that kind of motion going on. Sheriff says I'm not allowed to have a blade. Yeah? But I can get the same motion. That's the meat instead of the elbow, because I wanted to cut the muscle. See that?
And last one for cutting, and then I'll ask Brian for any commentary.
Do is I'm going to use the blade to manipulate, right? Place it and use the blade to manipulate. I'm just doing that all one-handed. Jam, kick, disarm, cut, bang. So I'm going to use the blade to manipulate. You good? Bang, bang. Inside the arc, place it, move it. See, I'm using that with tension. I'm not really even cutting. If he has thick clothes on, it's probably not going to cut. But I am manipulating his body. And then we can move towards all kinds of fun.
Okay, so those were the cutting videos. Brian, anything you want to add to this?
If you guys are looking at those pictures above there, and that gives you an even remotely visceral feel, that's good. But you should seriously consider that when it comes to edge weapons. They are messy spills, and if you've never smelled large amounts of human blood, it has a very distinctive scent, and that might make you very nauseous. That is probably not the thing you want to discover the first time you've used an edge weapon to defend yourself. It is also more difficult to create mechanical compliance with an edge weapon, though it requires substantially less skill and leverage to make it work. And as we'll get into next, our goal is to stop them from whatever they're doing. It's not to kill them. It's not to win a fight. It is whatever they're doing that is forcing us into a use of force situation. We need them to stop. It just so happens that most of the methods of stopping a human being who is determined quickly causes long-term injury.
Yeah. And Brian used a term we probably should have spent a couple of seconds on, which is force magnification, right? So if you think of impact weapons, essentially you're using, Sir Newton gets a say in the engagement, but you're using weight and mass and reach as force magnifications, other than just your empty hands. The same thing happens with edge weapons or bladed weapons, where you're now putting all that energy into a really minute surface area, i.e., the edge of the blade or the back of the blade, or the tip of the blade, to magnify the amount of force that you can deliver. So, two different kind of ways that force gets delivered, but they're both force magnification implements or tools that, as human beings, we use on a regular basis. So let's,
One of the
yeah,
fundamental differences between these is it's always just physics, right? It's force equals mass acceleration. With a impact weapon like your shillelagh or your fist, the mass is the total mass of the object. With an edge weapon, the mass tends to be quite low, but it's concentrated onto a very limited surface area. With blunt or impact instruments, we require leverage. If somebody takes a stick and places it on my body, it doesn't cause me any harm. If they pull it across my neck, other than maybe being lacquered and causing me a minor burn or something, it's not really going to cause any damage. On the other hand, an edge weapon placed against me doesn't inherently cause damage, but if it moves at all, it'll slice it to pieces.
right.
So it just doesn't require the same kind of leverage, and so from a injury point of view, requires both less skill to use, and but a lot more skill to successfully defend against.
Agreed. So let's spend some time right there at the bottom. You'll see you need to expect 10 to 120 seconds of enduring attack even after delivering a potentially lethal injury against the opponent. So let's talk through what we mean by that. Brian, you want to take lead on this one?
Yeah. So Hollywood or whatever country you're in's version of Hollywood uh, causes some significant myths when it comes to stopping a human being in with violence quickly. Uh, so this is information from trauma surgery, and it's broken down here fairly clear. But I'm going to go over it one point at a time because for a lot of you who've never heard this information, this should be a bit of a paradigm shift for you. So assuming a 155 pound adult male, so just average everyday guy, not a bodybuilder, not a badass, just an average dude with normal blood ox. So just again average across the board. Uh, we're referencing veins here. These veins are completely cut. There's a sheath that actually goes over veins. So if they're partially cut, they usually self-seal, which significantly limits the damage. So we're talking a full severing, as good as you're going to possibly do it with an edge weapon, and no compression or first aid. The most basic thing that I assume that majority of folks on this call understand is if you get a cut, you put pressure on it, right? So we're assuming none of that happens. And the time we're given is until they're mechanically incapable of continuing. That usually, not always, leads to unconsciousness or death. So if you look at the list at the bottom there, what can they lose? At 1.5 liters, they're going to be dizzy and weak. Think of how much blood that is. That is an extremely large amount of blood. And then they're going to have to lose 1.5 to 2 liters to not be able to stand up anymore, but most of the time they can still pull a trigger. So we're talking an extreme amount of blood on the floor. Think of a 2-liter bottle of soda and dump that on the floor. That is how much blood one human has to lose before they probably can't pull a trigger anymore. Carotid artery and jugular veins, those are in your neck. We usually consider those a really big deal. If your carotid is severed, you're talking 2 to 20 minutes for this to happen. I don't know about you guys, but I can cause a hell of a lot of harm in 2 to 20 minutes. And that's without any pressure or anything. Right? And you make your way down this list. Another one that is famous in martial arts circles is the femoral artery inside the thigh there. You get that one cut and, oh, that's a fight stopper. They're done. You got 5 minutes to an hour for hemorrhagic shock on that. Absolutely huge. And then straight in the heart. We think a stab to the heart. Oh, like in the movies, they fall over, they die immediately. That is not the case, kids. 1 to 2 minutes. That is a really, really long time for somebody to be either stabbing you, shooting you, hitting you with a stick, or strangling you. So the idea that you're going to stab someone or cut somebody and they fall down, go boom, is not a mechanical reality. That isn't to say that they won't lose their mind, their morale will break and they'll freak out and run away. But mechanically, they will be okay for quite some time after you've inflicted what otherwise would be considered a fatal injury.
Yeah, and then important to repeat a couple of things. One, 155-pound male. I don't know about you. I'm a little bigger than 155 pounds, so these numbers might alter fairly drastically the larger and bigger that they are in terms of volume of blood loss. Just it goes up with the size of the person. The other thing that this is based on is an assumption of a person in essentially a normal state. So this is not including timers, if you will, on alcohol, mind altering substances, drugs, huge adrenal dumps because they're highly stressed out. Those will most likely alter those timelines and make them longer, not shorter. Again, this is trying to give you a dose of reality on what this actually looks like or doesn't look like, as the case may be. Brian, you want to spend some time on the Tehran's famous phrase?
Yeah, so there's a gentleman in the violence dynamic circles that we spend a little time with, Terry Trahan, great guy, and he coined the phrase that it's quicker to flip the switch than it is to drain the pipes. So with an edge weapon, fundamentally we're slicing them open and letting the goo come out, and when enough goo comes out, they stop moving. With and the term we'll use for all of those cuts is or even stabs is we use a timer. So you do your stab, you do your cut, and it starts the clock running. But as you can see, that clock is measured in minutes. Now, these are a single injury, so there is such thing as a cascade failure event. If I stab somebody 35 times, this will get a lot shorter very, very quickly. So don't think it's a hardcore number, but it is a single injury. It is not a fight stopper. On the other hand, a switch, which is rather specific. That is the brain, brainstem, or above C4 on the spine. So it's essentially the neck up type area. If we can cause a high enough impact there, that flips the light switch. Out they go very, very quickly. So a impact weapon has an advantage. It's a little easier to do that. Though we had the image, I believe, on the previous slide going through the nasal cavity or eye socket or the ear, stabbing straight into the head is a valid answer that'll cause a similar outcome. So the purpose in our system is to get somebody to stop doing what they're doing. We're not trying to kill them. We're not trying to cripple them. We have no such intention at all. We have already presumably used every skill we possibly can come up with to avoid this situation and try to get away from it. And now we're left in a place where we have to use force to get them to stop. And we want them to stop as quick as possible. People who are unconscious have stopped. And so hitting them really hard in the head is a very reliable stopper. However, unlike in the movies where they love to whack them on the back of the neck and they fall asleep, if you hit a human being hard enough to cause them to lose consciousness, there is a legitimate chance you've caused permanent, if not irreparable harm.
This is accurate. So let's reiterate because we talk a lot about goals, strategies, and tactics as well. Let's just reiterate the primary goal is to get the other person to stop doing what they're doing. So I've had folks ask me, Garrett, Brian, Nick in seminars and trainings and classes. Well, how many times do I need to hit them, or how many times do I need to do X to get them to stop? Well, you keep going until they stop doing what they're doing. That's your moment, right? So we spend a lot of time on force law in some of our seminars and discussions. And the line between perpetrator and victim is very, very thin. And what I mean by that is it's also very easy to go from being the victim to becoming the criminal and the perpetrator because you didn't stop in your responses to whatever you were facing. You kept going when the law says that you really should have stopped. You did enough to get them to stop doing what they're doing. That's when you stop as well. If you keep going, now you become the perpetrator, not the victim anymore. So another deep subject matter, but I do think it plays in right here very, very well on what our goals are, and then what are our strategies to get them to stop. Blunt force trauma using an impact weapon, edged weapons to cause some sort of drain and or switch between the two different weapon types.
So there is a fundamental shift in our targeting priority between a impact and edge weapon. In an impact weapon, as Brent mentioned earlier, we're looking for bones near the top of the skin. We're looking for hard targets that we can hit and preferably crack. With a edge weapon, I want soft targets. And then the opposite is true if I'm the person being attacked. So if I have to take a blow from an impact weapon, my preference is to take it on soft tissues because it's going to cause much less harm to me. Where if it's an edge weapon, I'd much rather take it on hard tissues like the back of my forearm, where it's going to be a lot harder to cause me any permanent harm or disable me. So it's almost completely opposite when you look at it from a targeting point of view.
Absolutely. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. One of the core concepts or principles that we have, and it seems again counterintuitive to borrow Brian's phrase, but that is we can treat impact weapons like an edge weapon. We can treat edge weapons like an impact weapon. So there is some cross pollination, if you will, between the two weapon types in how you apply them and how you use them, and also in how you train in them. So let me show you what I mean. We've got a couple of video concepts to show some of the details of what that might look like.
So think of this long arc, so it's cut kind of shape, right? Laps where I get this kind of cut, cut, cut. Yeah? Long arc and bring it back. Reach out, cut it. Reach out. If I go out, I can do that same kind of motion with the same idea. And that is the hit. That's where all the power is. You guys should hear it hitting, and it's kind of catching here when it hits.
One thing I'd call out there is if you noticed in that video, I'm reaching out for the hit, and then I'm bringing that back and keeping my arms and elbows and hands close to my body because I don't want the other person to be able to reach my nice juicy targets, elbows, hands with impact and or the fleshy bits with a edged weapon. Let's go to the next one.
Bang. We want to, it's this, we talked about this before, kind of this rotation, shoot-you action. Then I get good power delivery. I also translate this later to blade work, where it's actually a cut. So I'm getting that kind of hook.
And third one.
Where I get to here, and I'm taking hands. Right? I just want this shape for a second to get to this. Yeah? So, bang. And I can hit the stick, so it doesn't even have to be the blade edge. I could get to a point where it's the back end of the blade. Here. I'll take that trade all day long. Yeah? And again, it doesn't have to be the stick. The targeting area may be his hands.
Put that in the vampire box.
So now I'm lopping off thumbs, fingers, or even the hand itself. Or I had it this way and I reoriented it to the back and I'm just crushing. And you saw what it did to the.
Yeah, and on that last one, prime example of utilizing a edged weapon as a blunt impact weapon. And even though that was a pine training shillelagh, you saw how quickly it just snapped it in half with the same kind of blunt force trauma from an impact perspective. So, Brian, anything you want to add here?
Just to reiterate that we're learning a principle. So it's not so much that you cut with a stick or do impact striking with a long knife or something. It's more that we're learning a single physical motion that is, we're training the subconscious, not the conscious. We use the term lizard brain a lot, and it needs to get comfortable with the answer. And we have one answer for a whole variety of problems, and that's our principle. So it's a different approach than I think you'd see in many other places.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Right. So the other thing that I'd call out there is there are certain things that don't translate. Right. So there's going to be characteristics of a impact weapon, shillelagh cudgel, and the ways that you use it that certainly would not transfer to an edged type of weapon. Mostly in really you think of kind of the arcing angles, if you will. Usually the impact weapons are a little more flat in their angle, or you're very focused on the end of the weapon because that's where the force magnification takes place. With an edged weapon, by contrast, usually it's all along an edge, so it's longer point of contact with whatever the target is, versus an impact weapon where it's really just the end of it or the tip of it or where all the force comes together is delivering the maximum amount of force possible from an impact.
We can also get away with, for lack of a better term, some complete bullshit with an edge weapon. We don't need leverage. So I can start doing these goofy, odd angled movements because I'm sticking a sharp object in that requires almost no net power to cause its harm. But if I tried that with a stick, it would be a waste of everybody's time. It just wouldn't do anything. So with a stick, we need to generate force. We need mass acceleration. We need clean lines of power transfer. With an edge weapon, especially high quality ones, you can get away with very inferior versions of that.
Yeah, or much less runway, so to speak, on the power generation. Impact weapons typically it needs larger body movements to deliver power that's going to cause some sort of real effect. You don't necessarily need that with edged weapons. They can operate in much smaller space, especially when you just look at stabbing motions. Quite frankly, that's a very simple, very straightforward type of motion that's easy to generate in a really short amount of space. You can literally just place the tip and then shift forward, and you've completed a stabbing action. All right. So with that, that's kind of the core of the presentation. I do want to shift to one or two other things, have some time for questions, commentary. But let's talk about what's coming next. Tonight was designed specifically in preparation for our live seminar tomorrow that we're holding in our main training hall here in Pittsburgh. Shillelaghs and Shenanigans. So we will train and train hard from 10 a.m. till about 3 p.m. tomorrow. And we will train in some of the concepts that you saw this evening, as well as some others. So we've got folks that are coming in from all over. Should be a great day. The other thing we're going to do, the shenanigans part, is at the end of the day from about 3:30 until 5 or 6 or however long people want to stay. We're celebrating the fact that I referenced earlier, which is we've got students in 36 states and 21 countries and counting. So I just wanted to have a little bit of a celebration, food, refreshments. Translate that as beer. If beer or alcohol is not your thing, we'll certainly have non-alcoholic options available as well. But it's a chance to come together, train, have a great day, celebrate together, and just have an awesome live seminar. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great day. So with that, I also want to come back to the Ireland 2024 trip. So if you'll hang tight, let me show you one other quick video for that. All right. So really looking forward to the event. We're limiting the number of spots on purpose, so we have some one-on-one time. The fact that we're on an Irish estate in the town of Shillelagh is just going to be amazing. You're going to stay on site, train on site. We have several surprises scheduled for you while we're there. So after this, we'll send out everybody the information. You can go take a look at the packages. This is something that I certainly recommend that you don't miss. It's just going to be an amazing experience and a ton of fun. So with that, I want to shift to see what kind of questions or comments we might have. We can go through the chat and see if anything cropped up. Let's see what we've got.
So one thing that was going on in the chat there is a couple of people mentioned Fairbairn,
Yeah.
I might be butchering his name. I don't care. You get the point. He's the guy who wrote Get Tough. If you haven't read it, go read it. It's cool. But it was a World War II close combat manual. And he had a chart similar to the one we mentioned earlier, where you cut certain arteries and how long it would take people to die. And that was for killing Nazis. So we can extrapolate one of two possibilities from his timings, which were vastly shorter than the numbers I just gave you. He would say that they'd be done in a matter of seconds from basically any of those cuts. Either Nazis bled out much quicker than normal people, or the more likely answer is that he was really optimistic in those timings in order to keep up morale for the Allies. So it's if you go check that out, him and Rex Applegate, I think is the other guy. Yeah, that they wrote a handful of books, but they have the unarmed fighting and the knife fighting. But it was for killing Nazis during World War II, and a lot of the information they had in there has been discredited from a modern medical point of view. That doesn't mean he's wrong. Like I said, it's the numbers that we shared with you tonight are for one injury, one clean severing of one artery. I don't know about you guys, but if I'm trying to stop somebody, I'm probably going to do that a lot more than once. So, one clean cut of an artery and then 15 stabs in the head. That's it just to speed up the process a little bit.
Yeah, prepared to do whatever you need to get them to stop doing what they're doing. I'll just call out a couple of comments and questions. Dean, been in law enforcement for 20 years, recruit trainer for 7, confirmed pain compliance is a bit of a myth. We totally agree with you, right? Everything that we've seen, heard, and experienced ourselves, that it's highly, highly unreliable. In most modern departments today, I don't think even one, use the terms anymore, or two, try to teach pain compliance. I think they default to mechanical compliance in some way, shape, or form for restraint and control. Let me scroll down here. Happens faster
While
than you.
you're on pain compliance, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
From our Japanese lineage, the saying from our head teacher is pain compliance only works on good people, and good people probably aren't attacking you. So focus on mechanical.
Completely agreed. All right. Let's see. Timothy, I've seen a slashing of somebody that got it across the eyes. Yeah, if you spend time on the deep, dark hole that is the internet that I did over the last couple of days, you will find all kinds of gory and gruesome pictures of the ER for all kinds of knife wounds. It's eye-opening, and I think it's probably worth your time if you can stomach it, to really see what it actually looks like versus keeping in your head, the Hollywood myth of what you think it might be. So I don't encourage to cause those kind of injuries unless you need to in defense of yourself. But I think it's really important to understand, one, what they really look like, and two, also take home and internalize the fact that even with some really horrific injuries, human beings with modern trauma medicine actually survive at pretty high rates. So there's an attitude there that we talk about in our defense classes about, I'm going to go home, I'm going to make it, I'm going to survive regardless what happens to me, I'm going to keep going. So that's an important attitude to take with you.
And if you're going to, if you currently carry an edge weapon, then you need to be comfortable with the kind of damage it causes.
That's right.
Otherwise, you will cause yourself to freeze at a really, really inopportune time. So that if you're going to take on the responsibility of carrying an edge weapon, there's a lot of advantages to that. But definitely need to be comfortable with messy spills, nasty smells, and a bunch of other nastiness that's going to come with that in general. Also, it does not play super well to juries, so you're going to have a fun time with your legal aftermath.
That's correct. That's a whole nother discussion maybe we'll do on a future webinar. Derek asked a question, when starting, do you guys train blade or blunt in the dominant hand? Brian answered, fully interchangeable. We do train both sides of the body, so that's dominant hands, support hand, and we do that on purpose to try to even out the skill sets. I do train both sides, although I will say that from a weapon system and what I carry on my person, I do have very specific placements for my primary, secondary, and tertiary defensive weapons. And I train in that fashion, so I know how to find it, how to deploy it, and bring it to bear in different orders based on what the situation might present. And I know exactly where it is because it's in the same spot every single time. So, but I do train, or we do train on both sides with all weapons all the time.
Typically, a shillelagh would be considered an open carry weapon.
Yeah.
It's if you even want to define it as a weapon, and most of the time, if a lawyer is asking the question, it's not. It's a walking stick. Then we would have that on our dominant side, just like you would for any other walking stick.
Correct. And then Timothy, I've been in the Filipino martial arts for the past 20 years. I train a lot in bladed weapon. They do. Some of my background includes Filipino martial arts. That's where some of my blade understanding comes from. And I got to tell you that, having trained with some high level folks, excuse me, in FMA, it can be scary to see that up close and personal in some of the skills that are there. There's people that I've met that I certainly would not want to tangle with from a blade perspective. I prefer to back off from space and nuke them from 2 miles up. Much safer option. All right, so we are at 7:57. We do have a couple more minutes. Any other questions, please put them in the chat. As we wrap up, we will send you out a copy of the recording. We will send out the questions, and we will send you the link for the information on the Ireland trip. So watch your inbox for that. And then you guys and gals are always welcome to reach out to us on any of our communications, email, cell phone, text, go to the website, Facebook page, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. You're more than welcome to reach out to us. We are more than happy to have whatever conversation you'd like to have, and love to hear from everybody.
So, question with Dean, with the police in, I assume, Australia, are using a 21-inch baton. How well do we believe the techniques for a shillelagh would transfer to that shorter, lighter impact weapon? It's the same. We would call it a cudgel. It's a one-handed little stick. One thing I would warn you on, and it's possible this is different in Australia, but I really don't think so. Culturally, the collapsible baton is considered a law enforcement weapon. Legally, it can vary heavily, but like here, even if I can legally use it, they would ask me why the hell I have it. I'm better off with a firearm or a knife because it's more socially acceptable. So if you're looking at one of those, I would be cautious of how a jury would view it from a defensive weapon carry point of view.
Yeah, one of the things we recommend is if you're going to walk around with shillelagh, treat it like a walking stick. That means put a rubber tip on the end of it. Then it can be considered a medical device. I think Timothy asked, can you carry it on a plane? Up until recently, I'd give you a pretty clear yes, but I've started to hear stories where people have been challenged by TSA and not allowed to bring one on a plane. That's why, again, I think if you put the rubber tip on it and basically say, hey, it's your assistant, walking device, I think they'll leave you alone, but just be cognizant that it could be a risk, especially if you bought a really nice one and carry it on a plane. I wouldn't want to lose it.
Yeah, and we've seen several articles where the TSA refers to a shillelagh. They're talking about a cudgel, though. The picture they have is of a 12-inch one, so you couldn't claim that was a walking stick. So
Correct.
if you have something, especially if you throw a limp in there, or if you actually have a medical card for any kind of surgeries from the pelvis or down, then I would say your chances of getting away with it are not terrible.
There you go. And then I think Christopher asked, do you train grappling for both standing and ground fighting with and without weapons? Short answer is yes. I would not use the term quote unquote grappling, but we do an awful lot of body on body type of training with and without weapons, all around joint locks, throws at a really deep level. That is some of the background and history for myself, for Brian, for Garrett, for Nick. And that is very much embedded at the core of our system, which is also something that I think makes us unique maybe versus versus some of the other systems you might see out there. We are very comfortable on that person-on-person range and distance with and without weapons. So that's certainly something that you will see in our seminars, our system, our training material. And again, if you have any questions there, or you would like to see something, please let us know. More than happy to share. All right, so look, we are at 8:01. We are right on time. Really appreciate everybody coming on to the webinar tonight. We will continue to do these on a regular basis. You will get the invites. We would love to see you not only at a upcoming seminar for some live training. If you happen to be close enough, it's worth the trip. Even if you're not close, it's probably still worth the trip. And then I am very much looking forward to folks coming to Ireland in 2024. It's just going to be a fantastic, fantastic event. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night, and we will talk to you soon.